So we've got some breaking footage from over on the battlefield. A clip over on Reddit has shown that a tank has survived not only a shot from a recoilless rifle, but also a blast from a 500 kg. Now, luckily Pilestedt commented underneath this Reddit post and said, agree, that should be bye-bye. So I wanted to show the two major problems that were in this footage. Number one is ricochet mechanics, which not a lot of people have been talking about. I've been talking about it more on stream, but I am finally making a video about it. And number two, which is the health of tanks and cannon turrets in general right now, is in a really bad spot. So from that Reddit clip, we saw two things. The first being that it survived a direct hit from the recoilless rifle, and the second that it survived a direct hit from the 500 kg. And even more frustrating for the player who made that clip, it immediately killed them with the barrage missiles just blasting straight into him as soon as he couldn't kill it, which honestly he should have, let's be honest. So this video is gonna break down those two things in depth, the actual in-game mechanics happening, number one, so that this can be constructive feedback, because I honestly think that this is just like an oversight. This isn't supposed to be complaining about it, it's actual feedback. And number two, so that you, the player, are aware of this, so that you can plan your loadouts and kill tanks more effectively. So first, let's go ahead and freeze frame the clip and see why the recoilless rifle did not kill the tank. The moment he shoots, the ballistic missiles on the top, the missile rack, raises up just a bit so that it is an extreme angle and the recoilless shot ricochets off the bottom. So let's just break down how ricochets work and what extreme angles basically do, and how this relates to tons of weapons and stratagems in the game that can be underperforming sometimes because of it. Now, if we first pull up Twinbeard's extra patch notes from last week, we all remember that the HMG got a durable damage nerf, but it also got an angled penetration nerf. And you know, a bunch of people were like, didn't really mention the angle nerf because not a lot of people really understand how the ricochet system exactly works. And let's just go ahead and break that down. So I get all my weapon stats from helldivers.io. You can see they have all the weapon stats laid out there. Let's just take one gun, the Knight, just to give you guys an example. Now the Knight does 65 damage, 7 durable damage, but if we take a look at the AP stat, you notice there are 4 values listed, 2/2/2/0, and these are the 4 different armor penetration stats depending on what angle you are shooting from. The first angle being 0 to 25 degrees, then 25 to 60 degrees, then 60 to 80 degrees, and then finally the most extreme angle, which has 0 armor penetration on the Knight, which is 80 to 90 degrees. Now, for most weapons in the game, they have these kind of armor pen stats where it's the same number 3 times and then 0 or a different number for the most extreme angle. And there are some exceptions, one of which now is the HMG. But first, when it comes to anti-tanks, here's the recoilless rifle. You can see it has armor pierce 6 for the first 3, and then AP 3 for the most extreme angle. And that's why it ricocheted off of that tank, because when it lifted its ballistic missile rack, it basically ricocheted because it became an extreme angle. And to be fair, it is a bit unlucky, but also I do think that the system needs to get looked at. So now back to the HMG for a moment, because not only did this gun receive a durable damage nerf, but it also received an angled penetration nerf. Now, luckily, my friend Kermit made a clip showcasing exactly what this nerf did to the gun. So there is one thing you need to know before we show this clip, and that is the different hit markers you can get. So here is my crude MS Paint drawing, and basically if you get a red X, you're dealing full damage. If you get a white X, you're matching armor. So let's say you shoot a armor pierce 3, which is medium penetration, at a medium armored target. You get the armor pierce penalty and you're dealing 65% of your full damage. Finally, ignore the armor pierce freaking drawing I made. But basically, if you don't have enough armor piercing, like let's say you're shooting a medium armor pierce at a heavy target, it's gonna ricochet. And you'll also get this ricochet symbol if you're shooting at an extreme angle because you lose your armor piercing. So the HMG received an angled penetration nerf. I'm gonna pull up the HMG stats. You can see that it's now armor pierce 4/4/3/0. And you can see that the second most extreme angle is now down to armor pierce 3. It deals less armor pen on that second most extreme angle set. So let's go ahead and pull up this clip from Kermit. He's basically shooting a Factory Strider's stomach with the HMG, and the Factory Strider's stomach is armor pierce 3, and the HMG is armor pierce 4 from the 2 good angles, but AP 3 from the second worst angle, and AP 0 from the most extreme angle. And what he was showcasing is when he was shooting the front of the Factory Strider, he's consistently getting a lot of white hit markers. But for some reason, when he goes around to the back of it, he's consistently getting all red hit markers. Now, I'll just loop this clip a couple times while I talk about this for a second, so that way you guys can look a little closer at your phones and see this. Because I just think that the ricochet in this game, like the ricochet system in this game, is a little bit weird. Now, for some context, the ricochet system, the bad angle system came from Helldivers 1. Basically, in Helldivers 1, they had the same system. For example, if you had an EAT in the first game, you needed a dead-on angle to one-shot chargers with it. If you shot it at a bad angle, it dealt less damage, and this made sense in this game, and it was interesting, because in Helldivers 1, it's a top-down, it's basically a 2D game, and it kind of makes sense as a bit of a skill check. And also, the ship hub in Helldivers 1 had an encyclopedia, and pretty much anyone who looked through this encyclopedia on the ship hub was very aware of this mechanic. But the thing is, in Helldivers 2, we explore that third dimension a lot more. So not only did that angle pen nerf for the HMG really hurt its Factory Strider kill, which also, all the large enemies in the game got majorly increased health this patch anyway, and we're gonna talk about that in the second part of the video, but it's also affecting the HMG's cannon turret kill. You know, when you gotta look up at a cannon turret and shoot its armor pierce 3 heat sink, well, the HMG is at a bad angle and it's dealing even less damage, even though cannon turrets' health are a bit messed up right now. On top of HMG or the anti-tanks, there are also stratagems that this is affecting, and it makes zero sense on. One such example is the orbital rail cannon strike. Now, I've got a clip right here of B3 about to throw an orbital rail cannon strike. Did you blink? Did you miss it? What the heck just happened? He threw an orbital rail cannon strike. And the Bile Titan didn't die. So let's go frame by frame. And what we are about to see is a blue beam of Illuminate trickery. What is that? Oh, nope, that's not Illuminate. That is the orbital rail cannon strike literally ricocheting from the Bile Titan. Because at the most extreme angle, the orbital rail cannon strike has AP 0. Even though it's literally launching down to the planet from outer space, it can literally bounce off of a scavenger, for example. Another such example is the orbital precision strike. At an extreme angle, it has AP 0. And for what it's worth, this clip is actually hilarious, and I'm kind of glad it happened, but let's go ahead and watch this one.
Found something. Calling in orbital strike.
Now, this clip is actually honestly funny, and if you look at the angle it bounces, it kind of does make sense in a weird way, because that is it's like going off the slanted front of it. But at the same time, it is a little bit weird that an orbital precision strike can go down to AP 0 at an extreme angle. Now, my main problem with this is weapons and stratagems that you can't aim. Now, we're gonna take a look at a collection of clips that JM the Kid sent me. Shout out to JM the Kid. And one such weapon he showcases a couple times is the spear, so let's just go ahead and take a look. Now, in the first clip, this is a recoilless rifle, and given you saw the ricochet there, given the bad visibility on a lot of the maps, that's one of the main issues. There's just horrible visibility, and then he kills it with the second shot. There it is. Now, in the next clip, we've got a spear, and you can see there was a quick flash of blue light. The spear just does nothing here. In the third clip, and this one is crazy, autocannon versus a trooper. I gotta pause this one. There it is, an autocannon literally bouncing. Ignore the kind of bad quality. This is a Discord download. And there's that ricochet symbol. Next clip coming up, we've got the spear again, and maybe I think he blocked the blue beam of light, but I mean, you can see the spear didn't explode. And then here's the final clip, another clip from the spear. And you can see the blue beam of light on that one. Briefly, there it is. Blue beam of light, ricochet. And now final clip, another one from Reddit, is a recoilless rifle shooting at a charger. And notice the slight elevation and the fact that charger heads are kind of slanted. And you can basically just see that the recoilless rifle just flat out ricocheted off of this charger. Now, again, this is what I said, like there's hills in this game. There's just ever such slight elevation that can mess you up. So be aware of this mechanic. Be aware that your shots can ricochet. Now, before we move on to the 500 kg and the main problem with tanks right now, because it's more of a tank problem than a 500 kg problem, I just want to say I do think the idea that, you know, shooting at a very like shallow or extreme angle causing your thing to ricochet is a somewhat cool system. There are just many factors that can make it feel bad, such as horrible visibility on a lot of the maps. The fact that this is a 3D game and that just a slight hill can mess you up. Or if the barrager tank just slightly lifts its missile rack right as you go to shoot. There's also ricochets with weapons like the spear, the orbital rail cannon strike, the precision strike that you don't exactly aim. They can sometimes just come down at an unlucky angle, you know, wasting that precious spear ammo, or wasting your entire stratagem cooldown. And even just like that autocannon clip. I'm sorry, it just never makes sense to me that an autocannon would ever bounce off of a trooper like that. But the thing is, it does happen. And I think this leads to weapons feeling bad that a lot of people have never really spoke on. Like, you know, I posted videos about why the weapons are designed to suck because they weren't meeting breakpoints. But on top of that, they were also ricocheting a bunch of times. You know, does anybody remember the blue beams of light, the illuminator coming to the game that was going on closer to launch? Like, a lot of people do not realize when these ricochets are happening. And now that you know about it, you can watch out for it a lot more. On top of that, I think stuff like laggy servers can even make the problem worse. And in general, I just wanted to take this opportunity to highlight the ricochet mechanic in the game. Like, a lot of stratagems just straight up have AP 0. You can go look at the stats on helldivers.io. They have the weapon stats, and then there's a different tab for the stratagem stats. All right, so now on to the second half of that first Reddit clip, where he threw the 500 kg at the barrager tank, and it was still not destroyed. Now, this is more so a problem with tanks rather than the 500 kg. Some people have been saying they can no longer kill Bile Titans with the 500 kg. However, what they did with the 500 is they massively increased the radius of the explosion, making it much better for mobbing. But with that being said, you can actually pretty consistently kill Bile Titans if you kind of try to land it under its head. It kind of makes it a mobbing stratagem that you have to be a bit more precise with. And I don't think that's a bad place for the 500 kg to sit at all. I don't think it needs a total damage buff. Now, I will recommend something for the 500 kg later. What I'd really like to focus on and talk about is tanks and cannon turrets, because I think that these enemies' HP pools were poorly changed in the last patch. And honestly, I think it was an oversight. I think that this is a bit unintentional, because the entire point of this patch, and Pilestedt even said, they aren't working with breakpoints anymore, and that, you know, they actually improved almost every other breakpoint and every other enemy. There are a few that are still a bit weird, but one of the main problems this patch, I think, is tanks and cannon turrets. So first up, let's pull up the 500 kg. It has two sources of damage. Number one is the projectile landing on something. That does 2,000 damage at AP 7, and then the explosion itself does 1,500 damage at AP 6. So if we pull up the cannon turret's health, and by the way, this also goes for Annihilator tanks and Shredder tanks, and Barrager tanks are basically the same, except Barragers don't have heat sinks. We're just gonna look at the cannon's turret stats to simplify things. So with the tops of tanks, which is what the cannon turrets are, you can see they have 2,100 health. So for the 500 kg, if the projectile lands on it, the projectile damage won't kill it. And then on top of that, the 1,500 explosive damage also isn't enough to kill it either. Now, I think with the 500 kg in particular, they should take some of the damage from the projectile and actually front load it into the explosion, because it would lead to more consistency. And I don't think it flat out needs a damage buff, but I do think that this would make it more consistent. But you can see with the different damages I just showed you, the 500 kg, if you hit a tank directly with it, it's 100 damage short of the breakpoint, and that's a bad spot for it to be in. That's what the spear was doing last patch to Hulk bodies. But now let's talk about some other breakpoints, because if we look at the tops of cannon turrets, they added 2 armor pierce 6 front health kind of plates, and you can see it is listed to have -1 health. What -1 health means on an enemy part is that it goes to the main health. So basically, the armor 6 plates on the front have 2100 health. And let's go ahead and pull back up the recoilless rifle. It does 3200 damage AP6. So remember, it's matching armor. It gets the armor pierce penalty. And if we pull up the calculator, 3200 times the 65% penalty is 2080 damage. Look at that, 20 damage short of the breakpoint. Now let's go ahead and look at these 2 other anti-tanks, the EAT and the Quasar. These do less damage than the recoilless at 2000 damage. They're both 100 damage short of the breakpoint from killing the tank in its sides, because it has 2100 health. But what about the heat sink? Because the heat sink is armor pierce 3. And if we look at the EAT and the Quasar, they have 150 explosive damage at armor pierce 3. However, they're both armor pierce 3. This 150 damage gets the armor matching damage penalty. And if we take 150 damage at 0.65%, that is 97.5 damage. And when we add this onto the 2000, you can see we're literally 2.5 damage short of this breakpoint. Now, the thing is with this patch, all the larger enemies got massively buffed health, and they massively buffed the amount of damage for the larger stratagems and for the anti-tank weapons. Now this, I actually really liked that they did this, but they messed up tanks. For example, let's go ahead and talk about the Hulk heatsink and the Charger butt. The Charger butt sack and the Hulk heatsink always had their own unique health pools. So like the Charger butt is like 900 damage or 1200 damage, something like that. It's not as much as the total Charger's health. And same with the back of the Hulk. But for cannon turrets, they've always been a -1 health pool, which goes to the main health. Now, last patch, cannon turrets only had 750 health total. So when it comes to cannon turrets and tanks in particular, I think 2 different changes need to happen. Number 1 is that their total main health pool should be lowered to like 1800 or 1900. That way, EAT and Quasar can one-shot the sides of them, or the heatsink, or the barrel. And that way, recoilless rifle can one-shot it in the front armored plates. So this would fix a lot of different breakpoints for stratagems as well. And then on top of the main health being lowered a little bit, they should also add a unique health pool to the heatsink. Now, I'll just use the 750 health as a reference for last patch. If they want them to be a little bit tankier, maybe like 1000 or 1250 would be okay. But this is so that weapons like the AMR, the laser cannon, the heavy, and the medium machine guns can feel good to shoot the heat sinks again. I mean, look, if you've played bots this patch and you've shot a cannon turret heat sink, tell me how tanky it is, because the laser cannon cannot one mag it anymore. The HMG definitely can't. And the AMR, I think, takes at least 2 mags to kill a cannon turret in the heatsink this patch. And again, I just want to stress, I'm not complaining. I do believe this is a major oversight this patch, because not only were the new front armor plates just added, but on top of that, the heatsinks weren't a problem last patch, and the fact that they were -1 never really got brought up until they buffed their health pools. So I just think it's more of an oversight, and I just want to leave feedback. It's kind of the introduction of the inflated health pools on top of the heatsink not changing from -1 to have its own health, which is just making them really feel bullet spongy. This is the exact issue with breakpoints I've highlighted in many previous videos, and why the community was complaining about the guns feeling bad, which spurred this whole 60-day plan in the first place. So I just wanted to leave this very detailed, constructive video, and hopefully someone over at Arrowhead sees this. 2 problems I identified from that first Reddit clip, and I also included plenty of clips during this video as well, which is showing this problem a lot more. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. I'm out.